I'd like to thank Senator Booker and panelists and everyone who's here tonight for this wonderful opportunity to talk about one of the most important issues that are facing our country. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and we have long been morally and spiritually committed to the elimination of racism and oppression since the beginning of the Civil Rights Movement. We marched in Selma, and we marched in Birmingham, and our people died in Selma and Birmingham. So we come to this with a very deep, deep commitment with our foundational beliefs in justice, equity, and compassion, and our belief in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, including prisoners. The criminal justice system is broken, and we are at a moral crossroads as a country. Our correction system is increasingly rife with inequitable sentencing, long-term detention, and racial and ethnic profiling. The magnitude of injustice and inequity in this system stands in stark contrast to the values of what our nation proclaims. There is a distinct dissonance between what America proclaims for juvenile justice and what America practices. An alternative moral vision of a justice system that includes the presumption of innocence, fair judicial proceedings, attention to mental health and drug rehabilitation services while incarcerated, renunciation of inhumane practices such as extensive solitary confinement, and most importantly, a process that provides prisoners merciful restoration back into their communities. Mass incarceration in New Jersey has created unprecedented human and financial costs. From 1982 to today, the prison population in New Jersey has grown from 8,000 to 21,000. The cost of housing one incarcerated person a year is $50,000. The New Jersey cost for corrections has grown from $30 million to $1 billion in the same time period. And what is even more shocking is that the correction spending grew 3 times the rate of education during the 80s and 90s. Now, a state budget is an ethical document. It is a direct expression of the values deemed important in our state. And it is time to ask, do these budget priorities really reflect our values? It's time to re-examine how the funds committed to incarceration can be rededicated towards the restorative rather than the punitive practices of those caught up in the system, for those caught up in the system. Now, in order to address mass incarceration, I think we need to look at 3 areas. The first is institutional racism. African Americans and Latinos make up 27% of the population, but more than 80% of those incarcerated. Now, the county I live in, which is out west, has approximately 8% minorities, of which 2.7% are African American. Last year, 315 white people were arrested for marijuana possession. And during that same time, 1,619 African Americans were arrested for the same possession. So a black person was 5 times more likely to be arrested for this crime in my county. Now, there are 2 things happening here. One is the system is preferential to those who can afford a good lawyer and to pay the fines. And the second is that through profiling, the system supports targeting people of color. I know this because I read the police blogs every week in the local paper. And usually there are 3 to 4 drug busts that happen when people in their cars stopped on the major highways going through our county. The dynamic of institutionally supported racism is happening all over New Jersey. Racism diminishes everyone, and it is a major factor in every single social issue facing our state today. And it's time to bring institutional racism again to the forefront of American discourse. Secondly, we need to address the detrimental impact of the drug laws. It's not surprising that the dramatic increase of incarceration corresponds with the war on drugs. Too many incarcerations are happening as a result of minor drug infractions. Not only does this processing, as you heard, result in unbelievable expenses to taxpayers, but the conviction limits the lifetime opportunity of many young people, especially people of color. It is estimated that a person with a criminal record will earn 30 to 40% less in their lifetime because of that record. And finally, we need to organize. We need to pass a sound criminal justice legislation that helps restore those who have paid for their crimes back into their communities. Senator Booker is proposing important legislation on the federal level, and there are approximately 28 bills addressing the criminal justice system in New Jersey, working their way through the legislation. We've already had some success with bill reform, and juvenile justice reform was just signed into law yesterday. We need to build an undeniable level of community support for legislation that corrects the destructive effects of the current justice system. We have to build support for our elected officials who are willing to be bold, to legislatively confront discrimination. And we have to create a groundswell of public opinion to shift political will when necessary. The fight for civil rights and equality is real today as it was decades ago. And as in the past, I believe that our faith communities are the ones to lead the way. Social justice requires deep, spiritual, sustained work. And because of that, faith communities, if willing, can transcend the political and social and economic boundaries. They can transcend racial divides. They can amass public opinion and build the political will so necessary to address this issue. Thank you.